Picture this. It is the middle of the night along the Iranian shore of the Strait of Hormuz, a deep, unsettling quiet. No tankers, no shipping lights, just darkness. And then, without warning, the sky splits open. Bomber aircraft, undetectable by radar, begin their approach toward Iran's most reinforced underground locations. Locations constructed over decades, hidden beneath mountains, strengthened with layers upon layers of concrete and stone. Locations that were believed to be invulnerable. They were not invulnerable. What transpired over the following several weeks was not simply a military operation. It was a historic inflection point for global energy stability, for the distribution of power in the Middle East, and for the strategy of asymmetric naval conflict that Iran had spent over 40 years developing. A strategy that in a matter of days was turned to dust. Welcome to Bradley Madden. I'm going to guide you through every essential layer of this operation. The munitions, the planning, the key figures removed, and what it all signals for the future of one of the most significant waterways on Earth. If this is your first time here, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to Bradley Madden and hit that notification bell so you never miss an analysis like this one. We cover the conflicts, the weaponry, and the geopolitical changes that define our world. And right now, there is no story more significant than this one. Let's begin. To understand how we arrived here, you need to understand what Iran was actually attempting to accomplish. This was never merely about blocking shipping lanes. This was a deliberate strategic maneuver executed at the worst possible moment for the global economy. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated air operations on Iran under what Washington designated Operation Epic Fury. The initial assault was overwhelming. According to reporting from Britannica and multiple defense sources, the operation targeted Iranian missiles, air defenses, military infrastructure, and Iranian leadership, executing nearly 900 strikes in just the first 12 hours. The initial strike eliminated Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran's reaction was immediate and escalatory. Retaliatory missile and drone volleys struck U.S. military bases, Gulf states, Israeli territory, and commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. And then Iran deployed what it considered was its ultimate card. It sealed the Strait of Hormuz. Think about what that truly means. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest section. It is the single most vital choke point in global energy infrastructure. As reported by the Wikipedia analysis of the crisis, roughly 20 million barrels of oil per day, nearly 20% of all global seaborne oil trade, travels through that narrow corridor. Before the conflict, approximately 138 ships passed through daily. By March 17th, that number had plummeted to just three ships per day in a strait that typically sees 138. Brent crude oil exceeded $100 per barrel on March 8th for the first time in 4 years, eventually reaching $126 per barrel. According to analysts cited in Britannica's overview of the conflict, the closure has been characterized as the largest disruption to energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis. Not the Gulf War, not the Iraq War, the 1970s. This was the magnitude of the crisis, and Iran understood exactly what it was accomplishing. To maintain this blockade, Iran utilized a layered strategy of intimidation. First, the mines. At least 12 Maham 3 and Maham 7 limpet mines were placed in the strait, silent, invisible, intended to deny passage to any vessel that dared approach. Second, Iranian fast attack boats. Hundreds of IRGC-affiliated speedboats operated in swarm formations, striking commercial ships from multiple angles simultaneously. As of mid-March, Iran had confirmed at least 21 attacks on merchant ships, including deadly strikes on tankers like the MKD Vom. Third, and most critically, Iran's shore-launched anti-ship cruise missiles. Weapons like the NOR an Iranian variant of China's A-2 missile with a range of 120 to 170 kilometers, the Qatar, an enhanced variant capable of covering 200 to 300 kilometers of the strait, and the most formidable of all, the Abu Mahdi, with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers, capable of hitting vessels as far away as the Gulf of Oman. These missiles were concealed in hardened underground shelters carved into the mountainous landscape along Iran's coastline. They had been developed over decades, shielded by thick concrete and solid rock, practically resistant to conventional airstrikes. Practically, here is where it gets fascinating, because the United States military was not going to permit Iran to choke the global economy, and it had been preparing for exactly this contingency. The response arrived in two distinct phases, each one more targeted and more devastating than the previous. Phase 1, the underground assault. On March 17, 2026, U.S. Central Command issued a statement that sent shockwaves through the defense community. CENTCOM confirmed in a post on X that U.S. forces had, quote, successfully deployed multiple 5,000 lb deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The weapon in question, the GBU-72 Advanced 5K Penetrator, and it was making its operational debut. Let's take a moment to fully grasp what this weapon is, because the engineering is nothing short of remarkable. The GBU-72, confirmed by Wikipedia's technical entry, is a precision-guided bunker destroying bomb weighing exactly 5,000 lb, approximately 2,270 kilograms. It uses a GPS and INS guidance system derived from the JDAM architecture, allowing it to strike targets with an accuracy of just a few meters regardless of weather conditions. Clouds, smoke, darkness, none of it matters. But the truly impressive part is what happens when it connects. The bomb's elongated steel casing is designed to minimize air resistance and concentrate force onto a smaller surface area on impact. It does not explode on the surface. It drives through. According to the 1945 analysis citing former Pentagon expert Chris Osborne, the GBU-72 penetrates 100 ft of earth, or over 20 ft of reinforced concrete, before its delayed fuse initiates detonation. When it finally detonates, it does so in a confined underground space. The pressure has nowhere to escape. The shock wave expands inward, destroying the structure from within. This is not a bomb that eliminates a bunker from the outside. It eliminates it from the inside. As reported by the War Zone, the GBU-72 fills a critical capability void in the U.S. arsenal between the older GBU-28, which has been in service since 1991, and the far larger and far more limited GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. Using the GBU-72 allowed the U.S. military to preserve its limited stockpile of the larger weapon for higher priority nuclear targets, while still achieving conclusive results against Iran's coastal missile infrastructure. Multiple GBU-72 bombs were released on the hardened underground caves along the northern shores of the Strait of Hormuz. The targets contained Iran's NORCAD and Abu Mahdi anti-ship cruise missiles, the very weapons that had transformed every passing tanker into a potential victim. According to CENTCOM, the strikes demolished the underground structures from within. Iran's decades-old infrastructure constructed to withstand any conventional attack was eliminated in a single night. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed the outcomes with direct clarity. Iran's missile stockpile, he stated, had been reduced by 90%. 90%. That is not a setback. That is the elimination of a capability. Now, if you're finding this breakdown valuable, if you want to understand not just what occurred, but why it occurred and what it implies for the world, please subscribe to Bradley Madden right now. Hit that bell icon. We are covering this crisis in real time with the depth and context you won't discover anywhere else. Now back to the account. But here is where U.S. military strategists recognized something essential. Destroying the missile sites was not sufficient. because even with the underground arsenal eliminated, Iran still had dangers moving on the surface of the strait. Fast, agile, and tremendously deadly dangers. Enter Phase 2, the surface conflict. U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, Air Force General Dan Caney highlighted this second component during a briefing at the Pentagon. He was discussing the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the legendary Warthog. And before we proceed further, and yes, an aircraft developed in the 1970s was a decisive weapon in a 2026 maritime conflict. There is a reason for that, and it is worth explaining. At the core of the A-10 is the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barreled 30mm rotary cannon capable of discharging 3,900 rounds per minute. Its armor-piercing rounds can demolish a small, fast attack boat in seconds. But the A-10's true strength is not just its weaponry, it is its ability to fly low and slow at propeller-driven aircraft speeds, not jet speeds. This allows it to survey a target area for extended periods, maintaining what military strategists call persistent loiter time. It can also carry AGM-65 Maverick missiles and unguided rockets. In short, it is simultaneously a long-endurance observation platform and an immediate fire support machine. According to CENTCOM's official statements, A-10s were deployed specifically to locate and destroy Iran's fast attack boat swarms in the Strait of Hormuz, and they were not alone. AH-64E Apache attack helicopters operated in full coordination with the A-10s, using Hellfire missiles and their own 30mm cannons to neutralize mobile threats along the coastline. The dual combination was conclusive. The small boat fleet that had previously been disrupting 27% of strait traffic began suffering devastating losses. Iran's hundreds of fast attack boats, the foundation of its asymmetric naval doctrine, became the pursued. And importantly, the A-10's persistent presence in the sky had a secondary effect that cannot be understated. While those aircraft were overhead, no Iranian vessel could surface to deploy additional mines. The mine-sweeping operations already underway became significantly safer. The Warthog was not just a weapon, it was a guardian. There is one more essential development that altered the equation in the strait entirely, and it came not from the sky, but from the sea surface itself. On March 26th, Pentagon spokesperson Tim Hawkins confirmed to Reuters for the first time that unmanned drone boats were actively operating in the Strait of Hormuz during Operation Epic Fury. The new platform was the GARC, a 5-meter-long autonomous speedboat manufactured by Maryland-based Black Sea Technologies. Capable of fully autonomous navigation, these vessels conducted patrols covering over 450 hours during the operation, with an operational range exceeding 2,200 nautical miles. Their primary functions were surveillance and early warning, but they possess a secondary capability that Iran's fast attack boat crews needed to comprehend very clearly. When required, these vessels can be converted as direct kamikaze strike vehicles. Iran had early in the conflict attacked oil tankers twice using naval drones. The U.S. had faced criticism for being slow to counter this asymmetric danger. The deployment of the Garch fleet was the answer. America was now engaging its own asymmetric contest. Then came the strategic decapitation. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a critical nighttime operation that fundamentally changed the trajectory of the crisis. Admiral Alarza Tangiri, commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the highest-ranking officer directly responsible for the Strait of Hormuz closure and mine-laying operations, was eliminated in an Israeli airstrike in the strategic port city of Bandar Abbas. Katz framed the operation explicitly as a product of close partnership with President Trump and delivered a statement to the Iranian leadership that could not have been more direct. Quote, "We will locate you down one by one." U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth summarized the circumstances during a cabinet meeting with President Trump in a single sentence that communicated everything that needed to be communicated. Iran, he declared, no longer has a navy or a naval commander. Let that register for a moment. Not weakened, not diminished, gone. This assessment is supported by independent military evaluation. According to Gulf International Forum's detailed examination of the collapse of Iran's naval defense, U.S. forces destroyed or disabled more than 120 Iranian naval vessels across both the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy and the IRGC Navy since the operation commenced. Major naval installations at Bandar Abbas, the gateway to the strait itself, along with facilities at Chabahar and Qanar in the Gulf of Oman, were struck within the first hours of the conflict using Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles launched from U.S. Navy destroyers. By March 4th, 20 Iranian naval vessels had already been confirmed sunk or critically damaged. The satellite pictures of the Bandar Abbas base told its own account. The large support ship IRNS Macron burning at its berth. But zoom out from the individual incidents and a much broader picture emerges. What was the full extent of this campaign? The air campaign that enabled all of this possible was sustained, systematic, and historically unprecedented in its magnitude. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers departing from the U.S. mainland on 37-hour nonstop missions with in-flight refueling struck Iran's deep underground facilities using 2,000 lb penetrator bombs and GBU-57s. Iran's air defense systems could not identify them. They were undetectable. B-1B Lancers conducted 34-hour global strike missions against Iran's anti-ship missile depots, using their supersonic speed and massive payload capacity to deliver precision-guided GBU series bombs against coastal emplacements and underground silos. B-52 Strato Fortresses joined the campaign in early March, striking drone depots, torpedo production facilities, and coastal launch pads, maintaining continuous pressure over Iranian territory for hours at a time, as reported by Fox News based on official CENTCOM data. By the operation's fifth week, more than 11,000 targets had been struck, more than 11,000 combat sorties had been conducted, and over 150 Iranian vessels had been damaged or destroyed. Earlier in the campaign, as Army Recognition reported based on CENTCOM's March 12 data release, that number had already exceeded 90 vessels, illustrating the extraordinary pace at which Iranian naval capability was being dismantled. President Trump addressed the scope of these operations directly, stating that the U.S. military was, in his words, crushing Iran's weapon stockpiles, destroying their missiles and drone factories at levels nobody ever thought was possible, and turning their defense industrial base into nothing. CENTCOM went further. Admiral Cooper confirmed that the operation was not simply targeting active weapon systems, but was systematically dismantling the broader defense industrial base, the production facilities, the logistics networks, the command infrastructure that would allow Iran to rebuild its capabilities over time. This included a naval drone storage facility near the strait identified on March 1st and completely demolished within 8 days. An attack drone production facility in Tehran rendered inoperative less than a week after identification. The Yazidi Military Depot, a critical IRGC missile command facility responsible for manufacturing light and heavyweight torpedoes, was struck and its 8 production buildings destroyed. This was not merely a military operation. This was the systematic removal of Iran's capacity to wage this kind of conflict again. And yet, and this is the aspect that the headlines often overlook, Iran is not yet defeated. Even after all of this, Iran still maintains asymmetric options, concealed mobile launchers that survived the campaign, stockpiled drones, Iran's capacity to manufacture Shahed-type kamikaze UAVs in large quantities has not been completely eliminated. And critically, the mines already placed in the strait are still present awaiting clearance. Mine-clearing operations, as military analysts have observed, are expected to take weeks. Iran recognized, even as its conventional military capability deteriorated, that it still possessed economic leverage. In an extraordinary move, Tehran was demanding a $2 million transit fee from some tankers attempting to traverse through the strait, while allowing its own oil and ships from allied nations to proceed. On March 26, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced that ships from 5 nations, China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan, would be permitted to transit. Malaysian and Thai vessels gained access through diplomatic engagement with President Masoud Pezeshkian's government. This tells you something significant about Tehran's approach. It was not purely military, it was economic warfare. The strait was being wielded as both a weapon and a toll booth. The U.S. campaign has considerably weakened both instruments, but they have not been fully neutralized. So where does this leave the world? The figures tell a story of slow but genuine progress. Before the conflict, 138 ships passed through the strait daily. By March 17th, that had collapsed to 3. By the end of March, according to the data available, the number of daily crossings had risen back to approximately 15, still well below normal, but the trajectory is unmistakably upward. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper, in a briefing on March 23, stated it plainly, quote, "The lock on the Strait of Hormuz hasn't been fully opened yet, but the majority of the locking mechanism has been shattered." The short-term projection, according to military and energy analysts, is that 60 to 70% of normal strait traffic could resume within weeks, provided mine-clearing operations proceed as planned, and Iran does not successfully rebuild its asymmetric capabilities. But here is where the narrative becomes genuinely global, because the United States is not fighting this independently anymore. On March 19th, a critical diplomatic development emerged that signaled a shift in coalition dynamics. The leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada issued a joint statement explicitly condemning Iran's mine-laying, drone attacks, and strait blockade. They announced they were prepared to make tangible contributions to restore safe passage. They were not alone. A total of 22 countries pledged support. This was not simply symbolic diplomacy. The United Kingdom became the coalition's operational spearhead. The Royal Navy officially confirmed plans to deploy unmanned mine-hunting drones and autonomous surface vehicles, systems designed to detect and neutralize Iranian mines from a safe distance using acoustic and magnetic signature replication to trigger controlled detonations without endangering human lives. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband stated clearly that every option, including mine-hunting drones, was under active consideration. British military specialists were dispatched to coordinate directly with U.S. forces in the region, and the Type 45 destroyer HMS Dragon was deployed to the eastern Mediterranean, with British bases made available for U.S. strike operations. This is London's signature contribution, technology-assisted mine clearance. While the U.S. strikes from the sky, British autonomous systems target the invisible danger beneath the surface of the water. The division of labor is precise. The partnership is real. And according to Army Recognition's analysis, with approximately 50,000 U.S. military personnel currently deployed across the region, supporting Operation Epic Fury, the operational capacity to maintain and expand these efforts is formidable. But let's be candid about what was not occurring at the same time, because it matters. Multiple U.S. allies rejected President Trump's initial request to send warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Australia, Germany, Greece, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom all at first declined direct naval contributions. According to a Jane's operational update from mid-March, Trump did not conceal his frustration. Speaking from the Oval Office, he said that NATO was making a very unwise mistake, and pointedly questioned whether the alliance would ever be present for the United States when it counted. The March 19th joint statement represented a significant diplomatic reversal, a shift from hesitance to commitment, driven by the sheer economic pain being experienced across Europe and Asia as oil prices climbed and commodity markets fluctuated. Here is the reality of what the economic impact actually looked like beyond the headline oil price figures. According to reporting from multiple outlets tracking the crisis, the closure disrupted not just crude oil, but aluminum markets, fertilizer prices, and in a detail that surprised many observers, global helium supply chains. Qatar's Ras Laffan facility, one of the world's primary LNG export hubs, was struck by Iranian drones, causing a fire and disrupting operations. Iran's attacks on Gulf state energy infrastructure were not arbitrary. They were targeting the nodes of the global energy network with calculated intent. Shipping insurance markets told the story in cold financial terms. Before the conflict, war risk insurance premiums for transit through the strait ran at roughly 0.125% of ship insurance value per transit. By the days immediately before the strikes commenced, that had already jumped to between 0.2% and 0.4%. 4% for a very large crude carrier, a supertanker. That translates to an additional $250,000 per single crossing. And once the conflict erupted fully, protection and indemnity insurance war risk was effectively withdrawn entirely by March 5th, making the economic calculation for most ship owners straightforward. The strait was closed not just by force, but by the mathematics of danger. This is why reopening it was not merely a military objective. It was an economic emergency of worldwide proportions. Let's take a moment to place all of this into the larger perspective. What we are observing is the destruction of a doctrine Iran spent more than 40 years constructing. The Strait of Hormuz was always Tehran's ultimate bargaining chip, its nuclear option short of an actual nuclear weapon. The assumption was that any adversary would hesitate to bear the cost of dismantling it. That assumption has been demolished. The cost was absorbed. Iran's shore-based missile installations are largely silent. Its naval fleet has been shattered. Its IRGC Navy commander is dead. Its underground missile stockpiles have been reduced by 90%. Its drone production facilities have been targeted. Its naval bases have been struck within hours of the conflict's beginning. The architecture of the blockade, 40 years in the construction, fell apart in a matter of weeks. And yet, the lesson for the future is not simple celebration. The asymmetric danger, cheap drones, hidden mines, mobile launchers, remains partially intact. Iran's capacity to produce thousands of drones monthly while diminished has not been completely eliminated. That is why it had invested so heavily on cheap, mass-producible threats, drones, mines, fast attack boats. The logic was valid in theory. Overwhelm an adversary's capacity to respond to individually inexpensive but collectively devastating tools. The story of the Strait of Hormuz is not finished, but the most dangerous chapter may well be behind us. If you want to stay ahead of these developments, if you want analysis that goes beyond the headlines and actually explains what these weapons do, what these decisions mean, and where this is all heading, then subscribing to Bradley Madden is the single most important thing you can do right now. Hit subscribe, enable notifications, because in a world moving this fast, being informed is not optional. And as always, thank you for watching.